And I welcome each and every one of you who are being zoomed into for me, in the lower mainland, the unceded Coast Salish territories of Squamish Nation, where I'm from, Tsleil-Waututh and Musqueam. And know that you're all from the province and in unceded territories also, and welcome you all for coming to be part of this gathering, to have an important discussion and sharing of information and learn from each other on palliative care. And just want to put my hands up to each and every one of you for taking the time to be here today. I'm Sequoia and Wanik, and I'm going to share a part of Sequoia's song, just a short part of it, and say a prayer, a short prayer to start the day. And at the end, I'll say a bit more proper prayer for all of us and our families. My late grandfather taught me that we all pray to a higher power known by many names, wherever our nation or where we're from in the world, and that we need to respect each other's ways. And that him and the elders taught me we need to be open in our energy to receive energy from Creator and the ancestors. So you can't have your arms crossed or hands crossed or like this, because you're blocking yourself off to Creator and ancestors and each other's prayers. Because even though we're virtual, we can send our energy to each other. I firmly believe that. And I was taught that by my grandfather, that we all have that energy and can send it to each other and even heal ourselves. And so I usually tell people just to put their hands open and breathe in and out a couple times. Because I found it's the hardest thing for people to keep their hands from not going like this. And I find if you take a few breaths, it's easier. Oh, oh, hey, oh, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, ah, hey, ah. Oh, oh, oh. Oichika. Chen Quen Mentomi Kakakanak Chasiam. Yoncio so Tanoyap and Manman to squiles deceits, asking you, Creator, to help each and every one of your children gathered here today. Help, Creator, help them with the the work that we have to do, that we are in Chomo and Squalwin, one heart and one mind as we come together to share Snachum words and to hear the words, take into our hearts and minds what's meant for us, set aside what we don't need today and bring it back another day. And Creator, asking you to allow this work today to be yet one hot states up an excellent work, and that we all come together to Chen Chen Swite, stand and work together to hold each other up, support one another, help each other as we move through today and also in the work we do every day. And Tama Kwetsi Snachum, those are my words. Chen Quen Mentomi, I'm grateful and thankful to all of you for allowing me to open the meeting and get us focused on this important topic we're here to share about. Tama Kwetsi, those are my words. Back to you, Nicole.
Thank you for that, Sequoia. I always appreciate your openings and prayers. I love that. Yeah, holding my hands up to you as well. I'm going to turn it over now to Kath Murray, who's our main presenter today.
Thank you. What a treat to be here. What a wonderful opportunity for us to launch together the Personal Support Worker Online Palliative Care Certificate Program. Welcome. And Heichka, thank you. Thank you for participating. For those who are here live and for those who will watch the recording, I'd like to acknowledge that I live on the WSÁNEĆ territory and give thanks for my neighbors from Sartlet, Sayot, Pakwachan, and Sekam, and Elizabeth's neighbors from Songhees and Esquimalt. We live on the south end of Vancouver Island, and I am very honored today to have Elizabeth Costin as our guest speaker. The course that we're starting today, that we are launching, is titled, I Don't Know What to Say, Preparing to Connect and Communicate. One of the principles of palliative care is working as a team, and I have loved working for years with a nurse counselor team at Victoria Hospice and a physician who we had access to via phone, usually not in the same way as we did with the counselors. But over the years, I had the opportunity to work and to teach with Elizabeth Costin. And I believe that she's as good as it gets. So there's times where people travel across the province to hear a wonderful speaker. And I think we're very fortunate to have Elizabeth with us today. So I don't know what to say. Often people will say those words, and how hard it is for us to think about what do we need to say to others and how can we be supportive. And what's so interesting is that before we can learn about what to say to others, we really need to look at ourselves and look at our own baggage. So because in our work and in caregiving, we are often confronted with personal issues that show up in our work lives. So in trying to address these issues and looking at what are our own beliefs and what is the baggage we carry, instead of trying to sweep things away, it's important to help put those things out front so we can not trip over them, etc. And Elizabeth's going to talk about that. But let me just take a minute to talk about reflection. Each of you have the copy of the textbook, Integrating a Palliative Approach, Essentials for Personal Support Workers. And within chapter 2, there is a piece in there that talks about beliefs and baggage and about the journey. In the workbook, in each chapter in the workbook, there is a piece that starts looking at specifically at our beliefs and baggage and invites you to write. When you write, if you decide to engage in that as you move forward in the course, when you write, don't worry about what it looks like. Don't worry about what it sounds like. Don't edit for grammar or spelling. Just write like you're scribbling just from your inside of your heart. Just let your writing go and just see what happens. Sometimes you'll find if you like to write, writing on a plain piece of paper is easier than writing, say, in the workbook. And you can take any of the topics that you're looking at. So for today, we're going to talk about baggage and beliefs and introduce that concept. And we're going to talk about communication, and we're going to talk about the fix-it trap. So you might just take even any one of those words or the word connect. And you might write something like, to me, connection is about, and then just see where your writing takes you. So part of reflecting and a reflective exercise for you might be just free writing. Today we're going to talk about some of the, today we started with preparing a quiet space and a moment with Sequelia, introducing with prayer and with a thought. And it's so funny because after she had started, I found myself putting my hands up, and I looked in the web and I realized I was doing exactly I looked on the computer screen exactly what she was asking us not to do. So I put my hands down and took another few deep breaths. The next thing is being curious, noticing things. So today we're going to think about and ask some questions about what it is we bring with us to the work. But at work, you might be doing things at work and notice that you just aren't feeling very happy about a certain situation, or maybe that you're feeling really happy about a situation. And you might ask some questions like, what exactly is happening? why did I do what I just did in that situation? Could anything else be happening? What are my feelings about this situation? What's it like from the person's perspective, from the client's? How did that affect me? And what was the impact on our team? So as you ask those questions and write down those answers, and then you might just zoom in like you do on a computer screen where you can look in really close, or with a microphone or microscope or a magnifying glass, to look closer, to zoom in and open up to questions and think about other ways you might look at what just happened, and invite the opportunity to grow and to change. And in those ways, become more aware of the baggage that we carry. Now, Elizabeth's going to talk and share a story, and she'll also share a metaphor that will be introduced in the online course, which opens on December 1st. But she'll share an image of baggage and beliefs, and how it's a good thing to be aware of the baggage we carry and be able to sort it, put it aside so we don't trip on it, and keep it out of the way so we provide the best care possible. So Elizabeth, your story?
Thanks, Kath. Yeah, it was so interesting, the questions you were asking, because I remember many years ago a home support worker telling a story which in a group, which got the whole group kind of just taking a big gasp. She had been in a home with a man who was dying, and she was sitting beside his bedside, and he wasn't happy. He wasn't happy with how things were going. He wasn't happy with how ill he was and all the losses he'd had experienced. So he was complaining. And his wife came into the room, and she was there for a few minutes, and then all of a sudden she said in this loud voice, "For heaven's sakes, all you have to do is die." And the home support worker was just so shocked. And so she just stood up and she said to the man, "It's okay, it's okay, okay." And she said to the wife, "You didn't mean that, did you? You didn't mean that." And she left, just, I mean, obviously feeling terrible about this situation. But she had learned how to self-reflect and to ask some of the questions that Kath was just asking. What happened there? What was my response about? What was happening between that wife and her husband? What could I have done differently? And as she reflected on it and what her immediate reaction was about, she started to have some different insights, and she realized that from the wife's perspective, and these are two people who are experiencing the same kind of loss of each other, from the wife's perspective, her husband's grief and longing and loneliness would end, and hers would not. She was going to begin a life sentence of being by herself. And with that kind of understanding, this home support worker went back the next day. And she actually talked about what she might have done differently. And she encouraged them and validated both of them in their loss. It wasn't that one person had a loss and the other didn't. She validated them both in their loss, and because of that, she was able to open up a conversation in which they were able to share with each other how incredibly hard this actually was for both of them. So it was just such a powerful lesson to me and to the group about when we engage in self-reflection, the incredible learning that might be available to us.
And we've seen that often as people have told stories, as we've taught over the years, where people all of a sudden go, oh, I remember when such and such happened. And the opportunity to debrief that with one another, not only is an incredibly good self-care measure, but it helps build team, and it also helps provide better care.
Yeah, that's right. So I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about this idea of baggage, because In this course, you'll be talking about accompanying a dying person and their family on a journey. And it'll be a journey that you need to prepare for and pack for. And we use the idea of baggage because it gives you an image that you can think about when we talk about sorting through your baggage, or we talk about traveling light, or we talk about when you meet someone new who has different baggage, or when you're working with someone that you know very well, but you're going on a journey that neither of you have ever been on before, that you will know where you put your stuff so that your baggage doesn't get mixed up with theirs. So the question becomes then, what does baggage look like on this particular journey? And baggage is all the strengths and skills and expertise that we all develop through education and through experience as we live. But baggage also includes beliefs and opinions, values, biases, stereotypes, definitions of right and wrong, that all of us accumulate through family dynamics, through our culture, through a religion, through our personal experiences, through reading, even through talking to other people. The point, and the really important point about baggage, though, is that it's not good or bad. Baggage is just human. All of us have baggage, and we carry our baggage with us everywhere we go, into our work, and including into the relationships with the people that we care for. So what might that look like? What are some examples? Well, you might have an opinion about what a good family member is like, as opposed to a difficult family member. You might have an opinion about how a family is supposed to act when somebody is dying. For example, are they supposed to stay by the bedside? Are they supposed to give someone permission to die if that looks like it's needed? We might have a belief about what the person who's dying is supposed to do before they die. To forgive someone, to make amends, to see a priest. In fact, we might have a belief about whether or not having a faith or a religion determines whether you have a good death or a bad death. And we might have a value about quality of life. What is quality of life? Who gets to decide what it is? Is there a universal definition of quality of life, or is it very subjective and personal? Now, if our job was putting widgets on an assembly line, we wouldn't have to really worry about what we thought about, what a good death or a bad death is, what family members are supposed to do. We could just have those beliefs and those opinions. But in the work that we do, it is absolutely crucial that we understand what is true for us in all of those areas. Because the fact is that nothing influences the way we work more than who we are and what we bring to the work. And in fact, everything that you hear today and through the course will be filtered through your personal belief system. And as you listen and as you consider what you hear, in fact, it may be a reason for you to sort through the baggage that you currently carry and decide what beliefs you want to go forward with and what you might actually consider sorting out of your baggage. Now, we get in touch with our baggage by paying attention to the judgments and the feelings that arise in particular situations. So we might make judgments about people, about their behavior, about their choices. If we find ourselves saying things like, even to ourselves, that shouldn't have been done. They should have done that. That wasn't the right way to do that. That was the wrong way to do that. If we find ourselves spending a lot of time in that place of making judgments, it may be that we are carrying a belief or an opinion that actually can get in the way of finding out more about what the person we're caring for wants and needs, what's important to them. Those rigid kinds of beliefs can actually get in the way of us meeting people where we are. But what are we supposed to do with this baggage? Well, I mean, it's ours. We don't have to get rid of it. We don't have to pretend that we don't have beliefs and values that guide our own lives. The point actually is to own it, is to become aware of it. It's okay to have our own set of beliefs and opinions and values, as long as we consciously own them when we do this work, so that we know where we put them. We can see and evaluate how they affect the work that we do, how we interact with people. When we're consciously aware of our baggage, that's when we're able to set it aside to work with someone who's different, who has different beliefs, a different culture, a different worldview, a different idea of what a good death is or what a bad death is. So when we have this awareness, we don't end up blocking the path between ourselves and the people we're caring for, or getting so confused about what's our baggage and what is their baggage. What are their needs and wishes as opposed to what are our needs and wishes? What is their journey as opposed to the journey that we would want for ourselves? We have to remember that our job is not to change people. Our job is not to bring them around to our way of thinking, to proselytize, or to try to fix people. Our work is about caring with compassion. It's about accompanying people, supporting people, witnessing, and companioning. And the reality really is that there isn't a right and wrong way to die. It's like there isn't a right and wrong way to grieve. And just as you have reasons for all the baggage that you choose to carry based on your history and your own life experience, all the people that you care for have their reasons for their beliefs, their wishes, their decisions, and their actions. And it's very important to start with an understanding of where they're coming from and what their reasons are. And as Kath said, the beginning of that is actually understanding what our reasons are, what our beliefs are, and where we're coming from. So one of the kinds of baggage that I have found over the years that we carry, and especially the longer that we do this work in caring for the dying, is that we develop our own personal idea for us of what a good death would be and what a bad death would be. So let's spend a few minutes with Kath and look at, for you personally, some of the characteristics of what a good death would be and what a bad death would look like.
All right. Well, nice to have this opportunity to speak all together. And Sue is using her artistic ability to write good death on one side and bad death on the other side of the screen. And she's doing very well. And she looks like looks like she's doing pretty well. She kind of looks like my 5-year-old grandkid who's trying to learn how to print too. So this is good. Now, Sue, we could tell Sue that she could also type this in, but this is much more fun. So, and Nicole's even clapping for her. So I want to remind everyone what your options are right now. I just want to, let me read my little blurb here, my little piece here. So as you know, this recording, this webinar is being recorded, including Sue's artwork. You are welcome to post in the chat. So if you go along the bottom corner or bottom row, you'll see something that says chat. If you click on that, the chat should come up and you'll be able to write in the chat. You can post in the chat to everybody, and your name and your question will be known to those people who are watching in the group. I don't think that will be recorded. But if you would like to ask a question anonymously, you can send a private message to me or to Sue or Nicole, and we will then bring that idea forward, but we won't bring your name or your community. We will also stop a few times as we go, both now and as we move forward in the session, and you can make comments anywhere along the way. Your questions or comments, if you make them verbally, will be recorded. If you want to just put the note in the chat to say that you want to speak, you can do that. Now, Sue, I think, Nicole, can you do her one of those hands clapping things? She's done so well there.
Yeah.
So what I would like to do is have people either in the chat, Sonia has said to everyone, a good death, I think, is knowing the limited time left to plan. Versus, let me just see that again there, Sonia. So, versus a bad death being suicide. So, Sonia, I'm thinking you're saying a couple things. One is the bad death is suicide. Two is that you have time, but also limited time. So I think that's really different than somebody who's dying, say, with congestive heart failure or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, where this could go for, wow, somebody looks like they might be dying tomorrow. No, they're getting better. This could be going on for months and months and years. So I think that that's another piece of what you might be pulling out there, Sonia. Does anyone else want to contribute with what a good death would be? And we'll just move through here a little bit, just go a little bit slowly so that you can figure out. Oh, here Kathy has responded. Good death is old age, bad death is young age.
Sue, can I just sort of interrupt? Is there a way that people can type themselves? I think there is, but I don't see it because I'm a co-host. If anybody can see that, I think it's under view options at the top of your screen.
Yes, it is at the top of the screen on view options. You can do the annotate, and there's text.
Oh, yes.
As an option. Sorry, I couldn't find my mute button.
Okay, so once I click on text, I can type myself. So if people are on the computer, they can put it in either with text or the drawing method, which is what Sue was doing at the beginning. Kudos to you, Sue.
Yeah, that was well done. So Kathy has said the old age and the young age. A good death, Jackie says, is peaceful.
Okay.
Anyone else? Anyone from the north? Anyone from the island? I'll tell you one of Elizabeth's definitions of a bad death. She used to have just a few ideas of a bad death until she worked for a long time in hospice palliative care, and now she has a whole list of ways she doesn't want to die. But one thing in particular, I'll tell you, is that if we're ever looking after her, do not play quiet pan flutes. I don't really know actually what pan flutes are, but she's always said that, so I know that would be a bad idea. Ainsley, I think that you tried to write something in. Oh, Eva, no regrets. Nicole, I see you, if that's not what someone wanted. Absolutely. Ainsley's trying to do some writing, some artwork here, Ainsley. Pain-free. So Twyla has said pain-free. Thank you. And it's interesting how most of us think we would rather be pain-free, but it's, oh, and Jackie's saying sudden death is a bad death. Another one though, what in terms of pain-free is the people who say, yeah, I don't want to have much pain, but I don't want to be so comfortable and have so many meds on board that I'm just, you know, sleeping, or that I can't tell people what I want. And Nicole and Sue would laugh because, you know, some people have a stereotype, which this would just be an example of baggage and beliefs that that maybe Elizabeth would carry, that that maybe some nurses like to be in control and don't want to have so many pain meds on board that they can't say what they want. Okay, let's just give this another minute or two. Dying at home is good.
Mhm.
And with family and loved ones. All right, Elizabeth, we're going to leave this up for a minute in case anybody else adds to it, and Sue is able to then just add those in. A
Mhm.
bad death would be painful and alone.
Mhm.
Yeah. Elizabeth, do you want to, should we just talk for a minute about this whole thing about good death, bad death, and how we differ on this?
Yeah, I think that's really important, because what's great about this list is it's a personal list. It's a very subjective list. How we define good and bad death is profoundly influenced by the culture we live in, our society, religion, our life experiences. Perhaps we've watched someone die and we took something away from that. Our perceptions of what is possible in terms of a good and bad death are just a few of the things that would influence our beliefs about what is a good and bad death. I also find that what we think of a good and bad death can evolve over time. For example, someone said old age is a good death and bad death is young. Well, when I was 30, I thought somebody in their 70s, I mean, really, you know, they'd lived a good length of time. That's not a bad, dying in your 70s wouldn't be a bad death. Well, I'm here now. That goalpost has moved a long way. And now I'm thinking, yeah, I may be in the 90s. So, you know, that definition of what's old has certainly evolved. Beyond that, I think what's very interesting, and Kath and I over the years have many, many times used this exercise and made this list, is just how you can have the same thing perhaps on both sides. So, one example might be that someone might say dying alone would be a bad death. Dying surrounded by loved ones would be a good death. Now, when I'm thinking of somebody dying alone, I'm not thinking of somebody dying out in the woods by themselves. I'm thinking that, you know, somebody who dies in a room by themselves. But I remember a time when a family gathered around a man who was dying, and they were pretty much there 24/7 for many days. And then it just happened that they all left the room briefly for the different reasons, but at the same time. Somebody went to the washroom, somebody got a coffee, somebody took a smoke outside. The thing being that in that brief moment, the man died. And the family was distraught. It was like, what? Why weren't we here? We should have been here. But when they thought about it, when someone said to them, does this make any sense to you? Is there any way that you might make meaning of what has happened here? They started to talk about who this man was as a husband and a father. They started to talk about the fact that when he was upset, when he was going over something difficult in his mind, when he was grieving, he would go out for a walk by himself. He would get in the car and take a drive alone. He did not want other people around him when he was doing that. And in that conversation came some understanding that perhaps this man who was so incredibly private, perhaps for him, a good death was actually to die alone. So when we step away from this very important understanding, because this is where it starts, of what would be true for me, once we can say, that's true for me, that's my baggage. If I set it aside, I can actually consider the possibility of what might be true for someone else. I remember another wonderful learning experience I had going into a home with the nurse of an elderly woman who was dying in her daughter's house. It was a very, very, very small house. It was a very, very rainy day, and the nurse and I arrived. We entered through the kitchen. There were children playing in the kitchen. One little kid was riding his tricycle around and around in a circle. They were shouting and calling out like children do. And the grandmother's room was right off this kitchen. And so we went into this darkened room where she was, and there was this cat, and this was a large, very large cat, the size of almost a small dog, and it was kind of leaping on and off the bed. And my anxiety level just started to ratchet up. This was not, in my mind, a good way for this person to be experiencing their last days or weeks. And so I said to actually she was in her granddaughter's house, I said to the granddaughter, what about closing your grandmother's door? I mean, just giving this woman a little bit of privacy. And she said, oh no. She said, no, I did that the other day. I thought she'd want the door closed. And because she's too weak to holler, she threw things at the door till I opened it. And when I opened it, she said, don't close that door. Leave that door open. I want the noise. So it was the opposite of my version of a peaceful death. But it was this woman's personal, subjective definition of what for her would be a good death, in the midst of the chaos that she loved, in the midst of the chaos that she had lived with, in the midst of life happening around her. So again, the beauty of making our own list, having our own understanding, telling the people that we love, that are important to us, what good death and bad death means to us, allows us then to take that packed bag and set it aside and ask people questions like, what's important to you? When you think about dying, what does a good death look like for you? Is there anything you're worried about? Is there anything that would be really important for us to know that, if at all possible, you would not want to have happen? And in asking those questions, and sometimes just giving people then the space to think about what would be for them a good death or a bad death, without promising that we can deliver some kind of perfect death, because that doesn't exist. But the death that is closest to what their vision of is a good death and not a bad death. So having said that, is there any comment, any questions that somebody might want to make in response to this conversation?
So you all have the ability, this is Nicole, to unmute your phones if you'd like to comment, or unmute your computer if you're using audio.
And also to provide a thought in the chat. Well, while we just wait and see what responses come, want to share a story or something I've seen happen a few times. seems to me that when people have been marginalized and often have not had access to some of the health care that they think would have been good to have had in order to have maintained better health and perhaps prolonged the period before death happens, that then when people are sick and they do have access to the system, that sometimes the definition of death seems to be, I want tests done, I want more done. And then people end up in hospital having tests done and things done that maybe wouldn't be their first choice if they knew in fact that death was coming sooner than later. So it's one of those difficult pieces, and it's one of the things that I think nurses, home care nurses in particular, that nurses are getting better and better at being able to call. Some doctors too, but nurses can sometimes be really the experts at being able to call when some of these acute treatments and tests and things aren't helpful anymore. So just again, just a thought to put forward. On the other hand, I remember a situation where a woman had asked the hospital to call her. This was before COVID. Had asked them to call her, and apparently she had received a few calls in the night, and on her phone she doesn't have any records of having received calls. And in the morning got a message that her mom had died in Emerge and had been transferred from long-term care to Emerge. And I was horrified to hear this story. And then the woman, the daughter, talked about how her mom always felt safe in Emerge. When she was taken in, that she always felt like her needs were being addressed well. And so then the daughter was able to say, maybe dying in Emerge was a good, safe place for her. Sue and I accidentally deleted one of each of the comments on here. That's okay, we can forgive you. Kathy has written, COVID, no visitors, trying to keep people home to the end of life more than ever. Yes, so a couple things here. So one of the horrible, horrible things that's happened with COVID has been the limiting of families to visit. So for some times in March, April, and May, when no one at all was allowed to visit, and now when you might be allowed one or two designated people. There's a funny story that was shared in a research project just recently that that nurses, hospice nurses are so good at trying to break rules to try and make things happen for patients and families the way they want them to happen, the way the person or family wants them to happen. But in this situation, we've really had to obey the rules. Well, there's one hospital that allows people to go outside for a smoke. So it was just fascinating how many people started picking up smoking. And so they could then go outside to have a smoke. And fascinating, imagine this, the families just happened to be out there and could have a visit. This challenge of COVID and visiting is so difficult. And when I think of the First Nation communities and the desire to be able to gather and be with, to be able to witness, to be able to be with and support one another, and how hard this is. And so now more than ever across the country, we are seeing people being kept at home longer and longer. Probably some of these people are people that normally would have wanted to have gone into hospital and would have maybe been able to have even been cared for a little bit easier in hospital. But the need to keep them home so that family could gather. Okay.
Kath, can I just make a couple of comments? I think what you're saying is so great, and I think it goes back to this need to ask people, in a situation where they might feel safer in hospital but more comfortable at home with loved ones, to ask them without making assumptions, what do you want? And the basis for people dying their own personal death has so much to do with accurate information. People knowing You talked earlier about maybe unnecessary treatments or interventions. People being told, especially near the end of life, the benefits and the cost or the downside of treatments like radiation, extra chemo, different tests at end of life. It is so important that people are given the opportunity to make decisions about what their dying might look like based on accurate information. And so sometimes the reality in my experience is that someone in the family or within the group of friends may need to act as an advocate, to ask those questions, to be sure that the person who's making the decision about their own death, if that's what they choose to do, has all the information they need. We can't make informed decisions without information. And so that's really a foundation of being able to talk about and perhaps even end up having our own version of what a good death would be.
So, and that reminds me too, is that sometimes culturally, for a certain community, it might be death at home. And I remember a little few years ago, a woman who said, no, I want to die in hospital. I want my immediate family here, and I don't want anyone else. And I don't want anyone from the community to know how I've died. And she was very clear. Elizabeth and I, a few years ago, were teaching a course out here on the peninsula. And someone said, oh, my mom thinks everyone has to be buried. And this was a First Nation community. My mom thinks everyone needs to be buried, and that's the tradition. Well, I've told her there's no way, and I'm being cremated. And so really phenomenal that she's able to address that probably 20 years before she'll be needing that service. How about we take down the whiteboard, and I'm just going to open up my screen so that I can see all the names and peoples. So we've got about 30 people here. If anybody's wanting to turn their mic on or to turn their camera on and just offer a thought about good death, bad death, please feel free to.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Kath, it's Sue.
Hi, Sue.
I'll just add, so I've had the experience of working with people who have wanted assisted dying, or medical assistance in dying, and have lots of conversations with people about what kind of death they want. And with those deaths, people actually can book what their death would look like, and it's a really different experience where they even have like a date right before they're made, or their procedure, or can have family with them, or others who don't want it. So it's really interesting to see the variety of ways people want to die.
Yes, yes. Thanks, Sue.
Can I tell a quick story about that?
Go for
It was
it.
in the Globe and Mail, and I loved it. It was about an older woman she was in her late 90s. She was slowly declining. She chose to have medical assistance in dying. And her family came around to that and agreed with her. And so the daughter thought, well, we need to have the night before needs to be a really special meal. We need to gather. And so she kept thinking about this, and she was, asking her mom, what is it you want? And her mom was really not being very cooperative in telling her what this grand meal she wanted before she died. And instead, these conversations ended up being reminiscence, and the grandchildren would come over, and people would gather, and the grandchildren all wrote her short letters, and so she was reading them. Anyway, the time got away from them. And here it was, dinner time, the night before she was going to have this procedure, and they ended up eating leftovers. And how the daughter, in hindsight, understood that was perfect. That was absolutely perfect. It was what they did that night before was fed each other in completely different ways than some gourmet meal. And it was the kind of feeding that actually everyone needed. And it was just the beautiful story of, you know, when we're open to possibilities and to allowing families to kind of wing it, and but with the intent of showing love and being present with each other, like it can look so completely different than what the plan was.
Thank you. So all of you very talkative people. We don't want you to feel on the spot, but I'm just giving you just this little bit of silence or pause so that if you want to, you're welcome to participate. And well, you get up the courage if you're wanting to do that, because we get to be in this program together for like 10 months. Sonia, hello. How are you from Lillooet there? So good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm not too sure if this was well, it kind of went along with what I put on there, like knowing when you're going to die, the good side part of it. And with two people that I have had in my life before becoming a HCA, I sat with them in the hospital until they had their last breath. And so when we were there, the nurses were really nice. They made him feel comfortable. Like at first he wanted to be at home, but then after being at home for a couple of days, he didn't feel like he could die at home. So we brought him to the hospital for his, like that's where he wanted to go. So we brought him there. And then that was what happened with him.
Mm-hmm.
The other one was he had HIV, and he stayed at home. Like he didn't go to the hospital or anything when he was on his last days. So we stayed with him until he had his last breath there. That's kind of how the one that I had for knowing when you're gonna die. They have the opportunity to stay at home or go to the hospital.
Yes.
That's what they did.
Yes.
Yeah. And then with the suicide, that was with a couple of the friends that I had. They were under the influence and they committed suicide, and then when we found them, there was a note saying that they were sorry and they didn't want to do it, but then they went ahead with it anyways. So that was the suicide part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you,
So-
Sonia. And thank you for just being courageous to put your camera on so we could see you. I think that Sonia, and I've gone blank on the other person's name from Lillooet. Sonia.
That would be Rachel.
Rachel. Sonia and Rachel are from Lillooet, and I lived in Lillooet and nursed at the hospital for 3 years. So, and Rachel's got a photograph behind her. That's not really the bridge crossing the river in Lillooet, just in case anybody's wondering. So Nicole's mentioned that people change their minds when they realize that it can be hard for families and community caregivers. Absolutely. And Ainsley has asked a question that we are going to come back to in the courses to come about how do you bring up to someone what their wishes would be for when they pass away. And so that's a good question. But the big question here, so I'm going to let the counselor person take this one. When the client and the son haven't accepted that death is coming,
Mhm.
So Elizabeth, how about addressing that? And then let's go on to talk about the fix-it trap. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so yeah, that is always a difficult situation when somebody hasn't apparently they're not talking about it. We don't know whether they've accepted that death is coming, but they're certainly not putting that out there. They're not saying it to us. And it's really important in respectful care that we don't force that information onto someone. By the way, you've got to face the fact. What we can do is come at it from kind of a backdoor way, just to let you know that if you ever want to talk about if things are changing or as they change, what might be some other decisions you might want to make. If you have at any point some specific needs or wishes around what you would want as things change, please let me know. What I want you to know is that I would be willing to have that conversation with you. When we talk in that, and you would use your own words, that's not a script. That's just an idea of how to approach it, but not in a way in which we knock down their barriers to have that discussion. We just simply let them know that if at some point they want to have that conversation, that we're available to it. And if somebody comes out directly and says, just don't talk about death, not having that conversation, the two questions I always find very helpful are, I respect that, and we won't have that conversation until you want to, or if you want to, but can you imagine any circumstances under which you might want to have that conversation? And the person might say, well, of course, if I was actually dying, I would want to have that conversation. And then we might say, so if at some point the nurse or the doctor felt that your condition was changing and that you actually were dying, you might want to have that conversation. Well, yes, of course. That's very different from don't ever bring it up no matter what. The other question I sometimes ask is, or often ask is, if things were changing more quickly than you had hoped or wished for, would you be doing anything differently than you're doing now? And again, it allows someone to say, nope, this is nothing. I'm not going to talk about it and I'm not going to do anything differently, which is their right. And it might allow someone to say, well, yes, there are things that I would want to do. I want my grandkids to come out here from Toronto and I'd want to see them again. Okay, so actually you would, if things were changing, you would want to have enough information that you could make that decision. So I think if we step away from, and this is what I want to talk about right now, if we step away from the idea that difficult situations and difficult questions need to have an absolute solution or an answer, then we can think of ways to let people know that there are some options out there and still respect their wishes for example, what they do and don't want to talk about. And so what I want to spend a few minutes talking about, and then we can have a discussion again, is what we call the fix-it trap. The fix-it trap is based on two things. It's based on the belief that it's our job to fix everything, and on the delusion that we can actually do that. You know what a delusion is. It's something that's not true. The thing is that in your work, and I know this from all the years that I worked with incredible nurses at hospice, but they're taught, and you are trained, to fix problems, to help somebody when they're physically uncomfortable, to do something about it. When someone can't access their nurse, you are taught to step in and help them find a way, perhaps to contact their nurse if they don't have the supplies they need. You're taught to fix things and solve problems. And absolutely, that is an incredibly important part of your job. But I emphasize the fact that it's a part of your job. And I think where we get into the fix-it trap is the belief that it's our job to fix everything, and the delusion that we can fix everything. And when we think we can or should fix everything, first of all, it can make us confused about the difference between fixable and unfixable pain. So for example, you go into somebody's house and they're in their bed, but they're writhing in the bed, they're in a lot of pain. You might give them a breakthrough dose of their medication, or give them the medication to give themselves, remake the bed around them, massage them, maybe give them a warm blanket. You fix that. But you leave the room of a man who's sobbing in the arms of his wife because she's dying and he's not ready to let her go, and you can't fix that. Emotional pain and grief can't be fixed. They can't be covered up. They can't be just magically kind of taken away. And it's really hard to learn how to be present and okay with not fixing unfixable pain, not answering hard questions, not solving complex problems. Why do we try to fix? I think we try to fix because I don't think there's anything more difficult than remaining calm and present and caring and open-hearted in the presence of unfixable pain, or questions we can't answer, or problems or difficult situations that we can't solve. And I think that one of the other problems, or the problem with the fix-it trap, is that it takes us from that belief that everything can and should be fixed to two questions that are so easy to jump right into. I'm faced with this difficult situation. I'm faced with this difficult question. What am I supposed to say? What is the right thing to do? If somebody would just tell me what to say and what to do. So we might say, what am I supposed to say to someone who is dying, to someone who is grieving? What's the right thing to say to them? What am I supposed to do about somebody who's really angry? What am I supposed to do about a difficult family that fights all the time? And what can I say to somebody to make them feel better so they're not so sad? So the emphasis is on what am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to do? And of course, again, there are many times when what you're supposed to do, that question, what am I supposed to do, is an absolutely legitimate question. In the course of your work, and certainly in a crisis, the emphasis is on what do I need to do in the moment to deal with this crisis? What advice do I need to give this family about how to keep their loved one comfortable when I'm not here? How do I need to teach this family how to empty the commode, or teach them how to, or tell them how to use the mouth swab properly? Those are all examples of when saying and doing are entirely appropriate. But there are also times when what do I say or what do I do, asking those questions can put us in the very difficult spot of having to come up with an answer to a question or a solution to a problem before we have all the information we need to either answer or act appropriately. And part of that problem is the belief that every question requires an answer. And so what I want to present you with, and what you'll learn about in this course, is that every question requires a response, or may require a response, not an answer. A response can be an answer, but a response can also be a question. A response can also be an observation. It can be a checking in or a checking out what we think we've heard or what we think we are seeing. And the best part of it is that asking the question, wait a minute, before I get myself all tied up in what am I supposed to do and what am I supposed to say, if I take a breath and step back and ask, what more do I need to understand about this situation? What do I need to ask about this situation. It buys us time and may give us the information to respond far more appropriately. So instead of being the answer person, we are an explorer. We are an explorer who understands that we're in uncharted territory, that there are innuendos, there are nuances, there are things in this question or this situation that we don't fully understand, and we're willing to go into that uncharted territory and learn more about it. So an example, somebody says to you, wow, you've done this a long time, what would you do in my situation? And it can be such a tempting scenario in which we say, well, I can tell you what I would do, I can tell you what I've done in the past. But that becomes our story and our solution to someone else's, or our answer to someone else's question, to someone else's dilemma. Instead, we might say something like, well, you know, it's a good question, and it's a common question. I mean, I think people often turn to people they think have expertise to ask them that, but you know what, we're all different. And there's really no right and wrong way to deal with this situation. So can I just ask you, what do you think? I mean, you know, when you've thought about this, what have been your thoughts? What's important to you? What do you hope for? What has worked for you in the past? Is there anything you're trying to avoid, or that it would be really important to you to not have happen? Could you just tell me a bit more about where that question is coming from and what it's about? And then maybe I'll have a better sense of where we might go from here. If someone asks you, what do the changes mean in my mom? And you're going, oh, I'm not sure. It's okay. That's fine. You don't have to be sure. What you could say is, gosh, you know, it's great that you've noticed those changes, because I've noticed those changes in her too. The reality is, you know your mom a lot better than any of us who are caregivers for her. What do you think those changes mean? Do you have any sense? How is she different? Has she been different like that before? What happened then? Yeah, do you have a sense of what this might mean in terms of the significance of the changes? You see, we can develop an entire conversation with someone without dismissing their question. Well, why would you ask that? I can't answer that for you. Without coming up with an answer, which is the opposite end of the continuum. Oh, let me tell you what this means. We're in that middle ground, that wonderful middle ground in which we engage, in which we talk, in which we're able to say, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how to solve this problem. But I can ask you some questions that might help you get closer to figuring it out. Does this make sense to you in any way? Have you seen this before? So when we give ourselves permission to be explorers, when we can say, I don't know, but can you just tell me more? What is this about for you? What is it you're actually looking for? When we can pause and take that breath and do that kind of commiserating with a person, that is a way of stepping back from our baggage. It's a way of making sure that in providing an answer or a solution to someone, we're not handing them our bags and saying, here, carry this for me or carry it with me. We are allowing them to own what is theirs. We are empowering them instead of disempowering them. So I encourage you to accept the understanding as you sort through your own baggage in this course that you don't have to fix everything. That's not the expectation. That's not your job. It's okay to say, I don't know. And that as an explorer, the learning that is available to an explorer who is willing to go into uncharted territory, the learning about life, the learning about death, the learning about other people, and the learning about ourselves is endless. It's just immense. And so I just encourage you to be the explorer in your work and learn all there is to learn. Thanks.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Appreciate that. And as we come to the end of this time, if there's anybody who has any questions or thoughts that you want to put into the chat or speak up, please go for it. I do love that piece that Elizabeth talked about that we all need to respond. We don't have to have answers, but we all need to respond. The idea that we would say, oh, that's not my job, or no, you need the nurse for that, versus, oh, that's a really good question. Oh, that's a hard question. Oh, let's see if we can talk to the nurse about it, but tell me more about your question. The further away you are from the nurse, from your supervisor, the better report you need to give so that the nurse knows more how they can best respond to the needs. So this is exciting. This is our first course of 5 together. I hope that as the months go that you will feel comfortable to email me if you have any specific questions. Maybe Sue can put my email down, but you'll have it in some of the materials you have, and you have it in your books, and you'll be able to do it through the online course. But it is Kath, K-A-T-H, Kath rhymes with Bath, Kath at lifeanddeathmatters.ca. But I hope you will feel completely comfortable. I hope that you will get to know your fellow travelers in this course. There's, I think, 43 people who've signed up to take the courses over the next 10 months. Every 2 months, there'll be another course posted. This course is due to open on December 1st, so we're excited about that. And in this course, the things that we've talked about, that we've opened the doors to here, we'll go into more depth and you'll have time to contemplate them. So we'll talk about baggage and beliefs. We'll talk about communication. And with that course, I hope that you will feel that you have some more tools in your basket to bring with you. The idea that, oh, I don't have to have an answer, I just need to respond. The value of silence, of pausing. And I hope that in my pausing today a few times to just give you time if you wanted to participate, you didn't feel that that was pressuring you to participate, but more just to give us the silence of being together, of listening, of asking open-ended questions, but responding with curiosity and avoiding roadblocks. We all know from different parts of the province, or we're represented today from Fort Nelson down, oh, and Iskoot is, somebody from Iskoot is here. I'm so excited. I can't wait to meet you more, all the way down to the south end of the province and over onto the island and up to Campbell River. We know on all of our roads how frustrating roadblocks can be. And yet we often use things that are like blocks in communication. So how do we avoid those? How do we focus on people's strengths? How do we not judge? How do we be empathetic? So those are some of the things that you'll get to play with. And we're absolutely honored to have First Nations Health Authority, to have Nicole and Sue to bring us on to participate in education. As you've seen and know, Elizabeth is a fabulous counselor, a fabulous resource, and throughout the courses, you will be able to listen to podcasts and videos that she's done. So on December 1st, you'll be able to tune in, and I will look so forward to hearing how this goes for you. And we will have a webinar like this, but with every course. Normally you will have it where you can enter the course and then you can bring questions to us in the webinar that we're doing with you, versus this one where we get to talk and meet first before you get to go in. So with all gratitude, I say Haichka, and I turn the time back to Sequelia. Thank you. And thank you, Nicole and Sue.
Kayachtan, and I want to thank you ladies and all of you who are here today in this workshop, I'm calling it. And I realize it's your program now as I listened, for all the work that you're doing and going to be doing. And just ask you all to, at times, and I know a lot of you already know this, to make sure and take care of yourselves and go for those walks by the river or creek or sit there and if you need to, whatever your teachings are, brush off with cedar or smudge or both, because I always have my sage and light it at times, and you know, and but our ways in Coast Salish are cedar and going to the water. And just ask you to do that, because then when you brush off with the cedar and throw it in the water, it takes away what it took off of you.
Mm.
And then that way you go home feeling lighter and refreshed. And I've been telling people also to learn their songs, or learn a song that really resonates with you, that helps you lighten your spirit. Because you're doing, you know, when you do this kind of work, it's hard on the spirit, and you need to make sure, like my grandfather said when we go to funerals, he said, you cry at home. And when you go to the funeral, you don't cry on the family, because you're going there to hold them up and support them, not have them hold you up when you break down crying on them. And he said, so you have to take care of yourself first. And so just sharing with you that sometimes that's what we need. And I always think of that when I, you know, and my daughter and my late son used to know that when they'd hear about someone leaving, they'd know I'd be upset. But then on the day of the final farewell, I went there to hold up the family. So I just share those words with you because, you know, we need to reach back into our teachings and old people's ways. And that's what's really important, because, you know, they have their things that they want done. And, you know, some of them, if you ask some of the things the ladies were talking about and what you were sharing, is I know some of our people, because we're very cultural, and I told the group last time, they actually wrote down in a notebook what they want it done from the time they go in the hospital to right to the day of the final farewell with their family. So you never know how people are going to want to move forward with that. My mother, late grandmother, I took care of her. There was a nurses' strikes and they couldn't care for her well at the hospital. So they brought her home. And what she wanted was, the morning she passed, was to be in a room so she could see the sunrise.
Wow.
And then she said, can you open the curtains now? And I called my husband and children, and, you know, we sat with her, and after the sun rose, she had her last breath.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, it was beautiful. And then we just sat there, and then that's when I phoned her doctor to come to the house and whatnot, because that's what she wanted. So, you know, took care of ourselves in the right way culturally. So I'm going to share a song, Naskia Gang, and I'm going to watch you, Kath. I had to tease you. Laughter is medicine, and all of our people enjoy laughter too. I saw something laugh out loud and
Mhm.
share with you when I didn't know I'm a granny, so I didn't know what LOL meant.
Ah,
Went, oh, it's so nice that everyone puts LOL on these posts. And I told my daughter, I said, I started to put lots of love too. She burst out laughing at me and went, Mom, doesn't mean lots of love. It means laugh out loud. And I was like, oh my goodness, how I like doing LOL. No. And then I put a heart. So I ask you just take a few breaths after our long session to be able to get grounded and go through the rest of the day. I'll sing a song and then I'll say a prayer, and then I believe we're done for the day. And thank you for all that has been shared today. My hands are up to you, ladies, in the good way that you share and how you, as they get used to these sessions, they'll become more talkative.
Yeah.
Ho, 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 hey, ho, hey, ho, hey, ho, hey, ho, hey, ah, hey, ah, ho, ho, hey, ho, hey, ho, Hoichaka. Chenque mentome kakakanik chasiam. Yonsio tunoy up in manman to squalls to seats. Yonsio manman squallowin. The squalls deceits, asking you, Creator, to watch over and help each and every one of your children gathered here and help them with their swallowing, the feelings in their hearts and minds, their mental, emotional, physical, spiritual well-being and health. Asking Creator for prayers for all of their families at Quaidalchet and Siayatchet and friends for their squalwin, their feelings in their hearts and mental, emotional, physical, spiritual health and well-being, and to protect them and put a shield around them in the days going forward, and to relieve them and make sure they take care of themselves to carry on with all the work they do in their nations and communities with families. Asking you, Creator, to hear our prayers for all our family and friends who have serious illnesses, the many types of cancers and treatments, the heart problems, the arthritis, diabetes, right now in the province, mainly in the general public, there's a lot of COVID. So prayers and for diabetes, HIV, Hep C, TB, meningitis, many other illnesses I can't name, and for injuries that need surgery. Prayers for all of them for their health, healing, and recovery. Asking you, Creator, to hear our prayers for all our family and friends during this time of the opioid crisis being bad with carfentanil and fentanyl, taking a lot of especially young people from everywhere with overdoses, and those incarcerated. So they have traumas and are battling alcohol and drugs to try and help with their trauma. and those incarcerated because of those traumas and battle. Prayers for them when they get out, that they don't realize the supply is dangerous compared to when they went in. So prayers for all of them to find a healing path to recovery and survival. And prayers for their families who are always in stress and worry and anxiety for their loved ones and don't want to lose them. Let our energy and prayers lift them up today and make them feel a bit eased in their hearts. And prayers, Creator, hear our prayers for all our family and friends who may have lost loved ones and have Shkwal and strong feelings of sorrow in their heart, to know that their loved ones are worried about them always. My elders taught me that they worry about us because we still have to walk this life journey and path we're on. And so they help us spiritually by sending, I had learned dragonflies have 2 sets of wings because they have angels on their backs come to visit, or bugs and butterflies are angels coming to visit, or a hummingbird, or maybe you see an eagle, raven, something you don't normally see. And if you're low in spirit that day and then you see it and you start smiling and feel good and walk around telling people, and then they're smiling and sharing, oh, so-and-so said they saw this, and it's such a neat experience. And that's your loved one spiritually helping you with the medicine in the way they can to lift up your spirit. So know that they help in different ways. Just learn to recognize it. And I share this because of what we were talking about today. So I, again, Creator, ask you to watch over all my friends here and protect them and make sure everything goes well for the rest of today and until the next time they gather. Tama Kwetsi Snachum. Those are my words. Chen Quinn Mentomi, I'm grateful and thankful to each of you for allowing me to share a part of your day and listen to what was shared and to say, Wuchayap yo, you all take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sequoia. So everyone have a great rest of your day, and feel free to use your materials, and we'll be in touch about the date for the next webinar together.